CBS News law enforcement and security analyst Paul Viollis joins us now from Melbourne, Florida. He is also the host of Security Matters on CBS News Radio. Paul, here we are once again, this time talking about not one, but two mass shootings in less than 24 hours. Let's start with Dayton, Ohio. This is the most recent one. From what we know at this moment, what is priority one for authorities in this investigation?
Is collecting evidence. There's no question about that, Elaine. The difference between here and what we'll talk about in El Paso is that the shooter here was terminated by police and done so expeditiously, which is great. But right now it's a matter of gathering evidence because they don't have the ability to interview the shooter. Also, it's going to be securing search warrants. Which I have to say was amazing that El Paso did it as quickly as they did. Dayton's going to have to do the same thing because they're going to have to go back and be able to look at his home or homes, his vehicle or vehicles, his devices, laptop, desktop, cell phone bills, etc., in order to start to understand why. What was the impetus behind this event?
So, according to authorities, the shooter was wearing body armor, carrying extra ammunition magazines. So, and what does that suggest to you?
Pre-planning, Elaine, and we've seen this before and we'll see it again, unfortunately. We know that that type of gear you can buy. It's not illegal to have it. So when you talk about this, you talk about somebody that clearly had an axe to grind in that local area, was looking for attention, may have fed off of the attention that the shooter in El Paso got, felt this was the right opportunity, and also didn't want to be taken down quickly. There's no, and he was preparing himself for a gunfight. When you go in that way, you want this to be long and extended, which obviously it was. If it were not for Dayton PD, there's no question this would have been far worse.
So I want to talk more specifically about the Dayton incident, but something you said just a minute ago, I think for some people, you know, might be particularly alarming, and that is the notion that perhaps what happened in El Paso and the actual attention that that shooting received may have been, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but a contributing factor, would you say, perhaps, to what happened here in Dayton?
I think it's entirely foreseeable, Elaine. We know statistically, when you look at empirical data about shootings, that copycat shooters do follow major events because one of the main aspects of the intent behind their actions is the attention that they receive. Now, you were mentioning, well, we heard from the press conference before that the officials in El Paso were talking about how cooperative the shooter is, which would speak to the fact that, you know, he got what he wanted. He got a lot of attention. He made his point. We're going to know more about that in the days and weeks to come. But clearly, when you take a look at the media attention, certainly us here at CBS and CBSN covering that constantly, you know, we know that shooters will gain motivation based on other shootings. So I'm not saying it is, but I'm certainly saying it could be.
And Paul, this is a question that we have talked about over and over again in other instances, but here you have an example, this Oregon district, as we just heard Dean outline, popular nightlife spot. You have a lot of people, particularly young people, coming and going. Is there anything that can be done for these kinds of areas, which I know are known in the parlance as soft targets, or is the reality that people, wherever they may be, could be at risk?
And Elaine, that's the question that we're all going to be asking, and we're going to continue to ask. And the answer is this, yes and no. Could there be something more that we could do? Sure. We could put jersey barriers around the entire event, the perimeter. We could have metal detector screenings and patting people down as they go into that particular area. That's possible. Is it probable? No. One, I don't think the public wants it. I don't think the American people want to live that way. Two, from a cost standpoint, who's going to pay for it? And three, it's going to detract from the aesthetic beauty of that particular area and probably reduce the revenue local shop owners are going to make. So I don't think it's feasible that we're going to go down that road. What I do think we need to take away from that, though, Elaine, is the fact that oftentimes when we cover these shootings, and unfortunately now we're at 250 for this year, but oftentimes, you know, we listen to people that somewhat get a little bit unnerved about, wow, look at all the police around here. They're there for a reason. And this is one of those reasons. And, you know, thank God they were able to respond as expeditiously as they did.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about El Paso now. We just heard that news conference from the local and federal officials. Where does the investigation go from here?
Good question. So right now, two things for our viewers to understand. There's going to be extensive law enforcement collaboration, and the intent now, the drive, is prosecutorial preparation. So on the collaboration part, more and more information is coming to light as a result of the interview of the shooter, interview of neighbors and friends, of witnesses. They're extrapolating or have completed extrapolating information from CCTV coverage, so they're building the case, and they're realizing there's probably 3 or 4 major investigative components that they're going to need to cover. So law enforcement, El Paso PD, working in concert with the FBI, ATF, and a variety of other sources, will pull out their best players and bring them there, as you heard from the FBI representative, bring them from anywhere they have to come from in the country to make sure that the very best people, whether it be forensics, whether it be the behavioral analyst unit, whoever it is, will be working on this to collaborate to produce the information that both the city prosecutor and the U.S. attorney is going to want. And as far as prosecutorial preparation, I think we heard it from the U.S. attorney. They have not charged the individual in that regard yet. They are going to charge him with capital murder, no question about that. But moving towards the hate crime, they're preparing for prosecution. Some of the things that our viewers should really take into light here is that we see this. You know, the great coverage here at CBS, and you get all the great the views, and we're kept on top of it. And the thought that somebody could not be punished for this is, you know, unexplainable. It's incomprehensible. But yet, it happens. So that's why police are going to move methodically, as well as quickly as they can, but more methodical than expeditious, to make sure that when they bring this case to the prosecutor, whether it be city or the U.S. government, that it's picture perfect, that it has everything that it needs to move forward productively so they get a conviction. That's really what we're seeing right now.
Paul, I want to get your thoughts on this other dimension to this mass shooting that we haven't necessarily seen in past mass shootings, and that is, you know, the U.S. attorney in this case saying they're looking at this as a domestic terrorism case. What is the significance, and what are the implications of that?
Well, I think it's hugely significant, because just seeing that the federal government's getting involved in local shootings like that really speaks to the fact that the government is realizing we have a significant active shooter problem in the United States. It's not a one-off or two-off. Elaine, 250 shootings, mass shootings in the United States this year alone as we start to hit the genesis of August. So that's, I mean, it's an indication clearly that the government's realizing they need to sharpen the fangs a little bit and start using the tools they have with respect to, they call it USC, the U.S. Code law, federal law, to get as much muscle in this and much more punishment to hopefully serve as a greater deterrent for others in the future.
All right, Paul Viollis for us. Paul, thank you so much for your insight.